Have you ever been in a really big crowd, maybe at a concert or something, or even caught up in a more chaotic situation,
Sure.
and you notice how you feel different, like your own behavior kind of shifts?
Yeah, there's definitely an energy.
Right, this strange energy, a collective feeling. And sometimes, honestly, it feels a bit irrational what suddenly takes over. It's pretty striking how we act when we're part of something bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So today, we're going to take a deep dive into some really profound, maybe even provocative ideas from Elias Canetti, specifically from his huge work, Crowds and Power.
Yeah, Canetti's book it's something else. Originally German, 1960, and it really is massive, provocative, brilliant, like people say. It offers these incredibly unique insights into what makes groups tick. Human collectives, you know?
Absolutely. So our goal here is to unpack Canetti's theories about crowds, sure, but also about things he calls packs, about survival, and just the intricate, often hidden ways power works. We want to pull out the key ideas, the sort of vital nuggets from this, let's be honest, pretty dense book. Give you a shortcut to understanding these forces that are always around us.
Yeah, and some of it is really surprising.
Definitely concepts that might make you rethink everything from like a quiet audience to, well, a battlefield. Okay, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
So Canetti starts with the crowd itself, his basic definition. He says it's a sensitive thing.
Sensitive, yeah.
Springs up suddenly, wants to grow really fast, but then it can just fall apart just as quickly.
Exactly. Like it has a life of its own almost. And he talks about two main forms. First, the open crowd.
Okay.
This one wants to grow forever, basically. It can pop up anywhere. And it's interesting because it often arises against limits, against ceremony. Think of the Sermon on the Mount or early Christianity or Buddhism pushing against castes. They're all about feeling that growth.
Right, breaking down barriers.
And then you have the opposite, the closed crowd.
Ah.
This one has clear boundaries. An audience in a theater is the classic example. It's contained.
Got it. And here's where, for me, it gets really interesting. Canetti argues that a crowd's main goal, like its prime directive, is just growth, pure expansion.
Absolutely.
And anything that opposes that growth, it sees it as constricting, as the enemy.
Which leads to this kind of paradox about how you deal with a crowd. If you try to break it up physically, police intervention, whatever, that often just makes it stronger in the long run. People regroup, feel more united afterwards.
Okay, so that doesn't work.
But the really dangerous attack, Canetti says, is internal. It's meeting the demands that brought the crowd together in the first place, or, as he puts it, offering bribery.
Bribery? How so?
Because it appeals to individual desires. Suddenly, it's not about the collective anymore. It exposes that small traitor he talks about inside each person, the part that just wants to go home, eat, drink, be left alone.
Right. The individual appetite versus the collective drive.
Exactly. And from the crowd's point of view, that appeal is immoral. It undermines the whole reason for being.
So this relentless push for growth, the thread of individual desires, does that connect to why Canetti says crowds always have this feeling of being persecuted?
Very much so. He describes it as an angry sensitiveness. It's directed at whoever the crowd decides are its enemies.
And it doesn't matter what the enemies actually do?
Not really. Whether they act harshly or try to be conciliatory, the crowd interprets it all as hostile, as proof of a plot to destroy it, either openly or, sneakily. It's like a defense mechanism built into the crowd itself.
Wow, okay. He uses some powerful symbols too, right? To capture the crowd's essence. Fire's a big one.
Oh, absolutely. The comparison to fire is striking. He says fire spreads rapidly, it's contagious, insatiable.
Just like a crowd wanting to grow.
Exactly. It breaks out suddenly, anywhere. It's multiple lots of flames, but it acts as one. It's destructive, always needs an enemy, something to consume.
And it dies out quickly too, sometimes for no clear reason.
Right. And it has that restless, sort of violent life. Canetti literally says it's hard to list the crowd's attributes more accurately than by comparing it to fire. It really captures that uncontrollable energy.
But he also uses the sea, doesn't he, as a contrast?
He does. The sea's different. It's emotional, sure, calm, stormy, but it's always there. You know where it is. It's open. It's manifest. It doesn't have that sudden, mysterious appearance like fire.
So its mystery is different.
Yeah, its mystery is what it contains, all that hidden life teeming beneath the surface. It symbolizes complexity, maybe, rather than that raw, explosive force of fire.
Interesting distinction. Okay, so beyond symbols, he talks about different states or types of crowds.
Right.
Like the stagnating crowd. Seems like a contradiction.
It does, right. But think about a concert audience. Motionless, silent for long periods. Canetti points out this takes long and artificial training. He says to an unprejudiced mind, it's actually astonishing.
Yeah, I guess we just accept it.
He contrasts it with how people hearing music for the first time might react. He mentions Tasmanian Aborigines hearing the Marseillaise and having this unbridled excitement. Totally different.
And the ultimate example of stagnation.
Is the dead, waiting for resurrection, lying there, dense, millions of them, but separate. And then, boom, rising together as a crowd. It's a pretty intense image of collective stillness before action.
Chilling. Okay, moving from stillness, the slow crowd. What defines that?
A remote goal. And incredible persistence. It's not about instant gratification.
Well, the Exodus.
Exactly. The children of Israel wandering for 40 years. Their unity, their very existence as a crowd, depended totally on faith in that distant promised land.
And the leaders constantly had to reinforce that faith.
Constantly. Keeping that remote goal alive was everything. It shows the power of a shared, long-term vision, even over decades of hardship.
Then there's the prohibition crowd. Equality through refusal.
Yeah, the best modern example is a strike. You have workers normally doing different jobs, getting paid differently.
Right? Hierarchy.
But during a strike, they become totally equal in their common refusal to continue work. That shared no creates this powerful, resistant unity. It's equality born from negation.
You see that in boycotts, too, I suppose. Any collective refusal.
Absolutely.
Okay, so if crowds can unite around a goal or refusal, what about uniting out of anger, out of wanting release?
Yeah.
This leads to the reversal crowd, right? And those stings of command.
Yes, this is a really crucial concept. Stings of command. Canetti argues every order you obey leaves this little psychic wound, a sting. And they don't go away, they build up.
Especially in people who are ordered around constantly.
Exactly. Soldiers, low-level workers, anyone in a rigid hierarchy. They accumulate these stings like psychological splinters. Alone, you can't do much about them.
But in a crowd.
In a crowd, suddenly there's an opportunity. They can collectively turn on the people who gave the orders. It's a release, a moment of deliverance from all those accumulated stings. The commanded, turn the tables.
That's powerful. It reframes revolutions, maybe.
It does. And he gives this fascinating historical detail about the French Revolution. We think of the Bastille, July 1789.
Right.
But Canetti points to something earlier, in May. A massacre of hares by young people near Paris.
Hares. Why?
He sees it as the reversal crowd testing its strength, turning first against the lowliest available quarry, the easy target, before they dared to go after their real superiors, the wolves, as he puts it. It's that built-up pressure finding an outlet, even a displaced one initially.
Wow. Okay, so that's the crowd. But Canetti digs deeper, doesn't he? Back to something even more ancient, the pack.
Yes, the pack is fundamental for him, older than the crowd.
How's it different?
Key difference. The pack can't grow indefinitely. It's smaller, surrounded by emptiness, by forest or desert or whatever. Its members really feel the need to be
more intense.
Definitely. And every single new member is a huge deal, a substantial addition, not like in a massive crowd where one more person is barely noticed. The pack has this intense internal bond and focus.
Can you give some examples? He uses some vivid ones.
Oh, yeah. Really vivid. There's the Talipang War Pack. This guy Manakusa leads a tiny group, refuses to wait for reinforcements. They just burst into an enemy house, kill almost everyone, throw children in the fire, mutilate bodies. It's brutal, but it shows that focused, intense energy of a small pack.
Grim. And the lamenting pack. That sounds different.
Very different context, but same pack intensity. Among Australian Aborigines gathered around someone dying, they press close, trying to hold on to them, keep them back from death. Then, once death occurs, they push the body away. It's about that collective holding and releasing.
Still that intense group focus.
Exactly. Or think about the Mandan buffalo dance, a pack trying to attract real buffalo herds. They can't rely on sheer numbers, so they use violence, rhythm, excitement to sort of magically draw the real buffalo in.
Yeah.
They know a crowd grows and attracts into its orbit everything of the same kind. The pack mimics the crowd to create the crowd.
Trying to generate increase.
Precisely, which connects to communion, like eating the hunted animal respectfully, keeping the bones so it can come back. It's all about ensuring that increase, that continuity.
And this relates to ancestor totems, too, men becoming kangaroos.
Yeah, through ritual practice, they become ancestors of both the animal and the human group. It blurs the lines, connects the pack's identity directly to the source of its increase, its sustenance.
That's deep. What about religious packs?
The religious lamenting pack is a key example.
Yeah.
He uses the Shiite Muharram festival, mourning Hussein, massive participation, weeping, self-flagellation.
Right, intense collective grief.
Intense is the word. Even trying to lynch actors playing the villains. It's that pack energy channeled into shared suffering and identity.
How does this translate to modern times? Does he see packs today?
He does. He controversially views the proletariat in production as a modern kind of increase pack.
How so?
Well, the proletariat increases in two main ways. Biologically, having more children, and socially, through migration from the countryside to industrial centers. This creates that monstrous multiplication he saw in capitalist societies. It's a different form, but still driven by that fundamental urge to grow in number.
And that disturbing Xhosa cattle killing, where they destroyed their own resources.
Yeah, the prophecy in 1856. Slaughter your cattle, destroy your grain, and the ancestors will rise, the sky will fall on the white men. It's a pack sacrificing its current means of increase.
For a promised future increase.
Exactly, a promise of increase from the dead. It shows how powerful that drive for more is, even when it seems totally self-destructive in the moment.
Okay, so we have crowds driven by growth, packs driven by increase. But what about the individual? What happens when the group dissolves? This brings us to the survivor. Canetti's phrase is chilling. The moment of survival is the moment of power.
It really is. It's a core idea. His argument is that the most basic form of survival, and therefore power, is simply killing someone else.
This is outlasting them.
Yeah. Striking someone down so you're the one left standing. The corpse, he says, is actually indispensable for the feeling of triumph. You feel unique, powerful, precisely because someone else is gone. And it's a feeling that demands repetition.
He gives some stark examples, right?
Very stark. Josephus, the Roman commander in the cave, he manipulates a suicide pact so he's the last one alive. Pure calculation for survival.
And Prince Selim, Akbar's son.
Impatient for the throne, murders his father's best friend, probably poisons his father too. That raw desire for his father's death to secure his own power, his own survival at the top.
Even in disasters.
Right. Epidemics, catastrophes, normal bonds break down. Those who live through it feel this weird sense of invulnerability. He calls them plague heroes. It's survival as a source of almost magical power.
Does this connect to things like cannibalism in myths?
Directly. Eating the enemy to gain their strength is the ultimate expression of survival as power accumulation. He mentions the Fiji Islanders having specific ranks, specific names based on how many men you'd killed. Koroi for 1, Koli for 10, Visa for 20, Wanka for 30. Its status directly tied to ending others' survival.
But survival isn't always grim. What about Mechal?
That's a fascinating story. He survives a massacre by playing dead, then finds a companion in a king vulture's daughter who transformed. It shows survival as potentially transformative, leading to new life, new connections, not just dominance.
And what about the dead themselves? Do they have a perspective?
Canetti imagines they do. They feel defeated because they've been survived. They resent it, and they want to inflict that same injury on others. It's like survival creates this ongoing debt or tension between the living and the dead.
Which leads to ancestor worship, the ancestor soul.
Exactly. A powerful person's soul, ritually elevated, becomes a guardian spirit. It needs offerings to be sustained. Its power comes from being remembered, from it having survived in memory. But it's not forever. After a few generations, it fades, loses its individuality, temporary power based on ritualized survival.
And this links directly to kingship again.
Absolutely. In some African states, like the Hema, succession was often through war. The survivor, the victor, was automatically seen as the strongest, the most legitimate ruler.
Because he killed his rivals.
Precisely. Killing enemies proved his power, endowed him with the right to rule. It was even built into coronation rituals. Survival equals legitimacy.
And that brings us to Sultan Muhammad Tughlaq. He seems like a case study in this.
A chilling one. He killed prisoners constantly, saw them as his most precious possessions. His confidence, his sense of power, depended on the sheer number of his victims increasing. It didn't matter that it ruined his kingdom financially.
Just the act of surviving them was enough?
It seems so. And he even needed religious validation for it, getting legitimacy from the Egyptian caliph. It's a stark picture of power derived purely from destruction, a twisted form of increase through death.
Okay, let's shift to the mechanisms of power. Canetti gets really fundamental here, right down to seizing and avoiding being seized.
Yeah, it's almost animalistic, that basic fear, being caught, being seized. He argues that social structures, distances, hierarchies, they all exist to manage this fear.
And the ruler is the ultimate example.
The ruler is furthest away, protected by layers, untouchable, really. but they retain the power to seize anyone, anytime. That distance is power.
He even looks at body parts. Teeth.
Yeah, the teeth is this primal internal weapon, always there, a natural instrument of power, ready to be bared, an internal threat.
And the hand.
The hand is fascinating. It comes from climbing trees, right? Its ability to grip tightly, but also to let go instantly, crucial for escape, for manipulation. And he connects it to grooming in monkeys, flea catching, as this basic social glue, a way of managing closeness and potential threat.
But the respected use of the hand
Is tied to killing. He's blunt. That which can kill is feared. That which does not directly serve killing is merely useful. Power comes from the potential for violence.
Even just sitting down has power.
The dignity of sitting. He sees it as representing duration, stability. Standing is temporary. Sitting confirms authority, projects permanence.
Interesting. And the orchestra conductor, how does he fit in?
The conductor is a potent symbol for Canetti. Standing, yes, but using tiny movements to control this huge, diverse group of instruments, bringing them into a single living entity.
Commanding life and death over the music.
Exactly. Its power is transformation, creating unity out of diversity through precise command. Almost magical.
Okay, back to commands. We touched on the stings, but how do commands work at their root? Where does their power come from?
Canetti traces it back to something pre-human. The flight command. The roar of a predator that forces you to flee for your life, it's a death sentence.
And human commands still carry that echo.
He believes so. Even domesticated, everyday orders still contain that underlying threat, however faint. And the fact that societies still use the death penalty, he argues, keeps that primal fear alive within every command.
Which reinforces those stings of command, the accumulated resentment.
Right. They build up, especially in those who only obey. Soldiers are the prime example. These stings feel like alien things inside you. You don't feel guilty for having them. The sting itself feels like the guilty party, the intruder.
So the resentment is directed outward.
Yes. And he uses the Diktat of Versailles after World War I as an example. This command came from outside, from the enemy. It was felt as stripping away Germany's own internal command structure, its army. This created a huge collective urge to rebuild that internal command, to get rid of the alien sting.
That makes sense. Okay, another huge theme for Canetti is transformation. How does that connect to power and flight?
It's deeply connected. Transformation is often a last resort for escape. He talks about linear transformations. The thing being chased changes shape right at the last second to get away, like in that folktale. The master and his apprentice.
Okay, shape-shifting to escape.
Then there's something deeper, more disturbing. Circular transformations. This is when someone feels totally trapped, completely seized. Their defense is to become dead, to give up all movement, all resistance.
To become still.
Utterly still. Canetti calls it the center of the circle. By becoming nothing, they paradoxically escape the power trying to control them. It's a profound passive resistance.
And masks.
Masks are different. They make you two people, yourself and the mask character. But there's always the fear of being unmasked, which limits how fully you can transform. It's not total abandonment like the circular transformation.
And this links back to kings. Some could transform.
Yeah, early kings were often seen as master transformers, able to take many forms. Others had rules against transforming, maybe to limit their power. The ability to change, to evade, was a source of authority.
He also mentions turning men into animals.
As a motive for slavery, yeah. Dehumanizing them, and the opposite, turning animals into men, like in Darwinism or training performing animals, trying to control the boundaries of being.
Okay, finally, how does all this, crowds, power, survival, transformation, connect to paranoia? Canetti calls it an illness of power.
Literally. He sees the delusions of a paranoiac as a kind of blueprint, a distorted model of how political power actually works.
He uses the Schreiber case, right?
Yes, Daniel Paul Schreiber, a judge who had these incredibly detailed delusions, grandiose ones, like creating 50 negresses or 100 golden castles.
Wow.
And intense persecution delusions. Multiple murder attempts, having his blood drained daily. He believed the crowd is always on his side. He could command dogs to attack people, invent weapons like a steam guillotine.
So how is that a model of power?
Canetti suggests the paranoiac ruler, in their mind, absorbs individuals into themselves, constantly needs to renew their own greatness, feels threatened by the crowd's energy even while needing it. Schreiber's internal world mirrors the dynamics of a tyrant managing their power and their populace.
It's a frightening parallel.
It is, and it gets down to the core, the lust for power. Canetti says something incredibly bleak. For every great name in history, 100 others might have been substituted. Here, each of us is a king in a field of corpses. That feeling of being the survivor, the one in charge, is universal, even if usually suppressed.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. This complex world of crowds, packs, survivors, the deep mechanics of power, all through Canetti's lens.
Yeah, from the weird unity you feel in a strike to the really disturbing logic of someone like Sultan Tuglak or even Schreber's delusions, human groups are complicated.
Definitely complicated.
Yeah.
What seems to run through it all is that relentless drive for increase, for growth, for more.
That and the hidden anxieties around commands, the stings they leave, and just the raw, powerful pull of being the one left standing. It's a dark view sometimes, but compelling.
So for you listening,
Yeah.
what does this all mean? Maybe next time you're in any kind of crowd. Could be a concert, could be a protest, could just be, I don't know, waiting in line somewhere.
Yeah.
Think about these underlying forces. Is there a collective urge to grow? Is there a shared sense of being persecuted, even subtly? Or just that quiet dance of command and obedience happening?
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Especially now with information spreading so fast, online mobs forming in seconds. How much of Canetti's analysis of these sort of ancient human drives is still playing out?
Right. Shaping our world in ways we don't even consciously notice.
Exactly.
Well, we hope this deep dive has maybe given you a new way to look at things, a lens to make those invisible forces of human gathering just a little bit more visible.